Hi, I'm Nica Waters.
And I'm Carolyn Sherlock.
And welcome to the Boat Galley podcast. We're so excited because the two of us are together. We're almost never in the same place, so it's super fun to be trying this out today. Today we're going to be talking about doing hard things.
Yeah, basically stepping outside your comfort zone. And this whole experience is going way out of my comfort zone for me. Because you understand, I either work from a script or, in my previous professional life, did stuff where I had several weeks of practicing. Nica has convinced me that we are going to do this just talk as we go and what we're thinking about. So here we go. We're going to talk about that whole deal of going outside your comfort zone.
Luckily, when it comes to anchoring, there's no need to go outside of your comfort zone. Today's episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by Mantis Marine, maker of the Mantis Anchor, now available in models with and without a roll bar. Proven to set reliably in the most challenging bottoms, the Mantis Anchor digs like no other, making anchoring safer and boating more enjoyable. Mantis Marine brings to market practical, durable, and affordable marine products, including anchoring gear, scuba diving accessories, rechargeable waterproof headlamp for hands-free lighting, and solar charging navigation lights. Visit mantismarine.com and see for yourself.
Nica, since I'm the one that's a little bit nervous about this whole thing, how about you go ahead and give some of your tips for going outside of a comfort zone?
So I'm actually gonna back up a little bit and say, because what's going through my head is when people talk about going cruising, in your heads it's I'm gonna move onto a boat and it's all gonna be beaches and umbrella drinks. It's all gonna be great. It's gonna be easy. What's hard about living on a boat? And one of the things that I think is often part of the really steep learning curve for people moving onto a boat and going cruising is understanding and coming to grips with how tough it is to actually be doing this. So what is hard about living on a boat and going cruising? And those are two separate things. Living on a boat is one thing, going cruising is another. And so I would caution you to think long and hard about how good you are at being flexible and thinking about things. Don't think you're going to move onto a boat and immediately leave to go cruising, particularly if you've never lived on a boat before, because it's so challenging in so many different ways, not the least of which is the small space, the different kinds of storage, the fact that you have to deal with limited water and limited electricity and be your own maintenance person for all of those things. That can take a long time to get just used to doing those things.
No heat and no air conditioning are two other big ones too.
Very much so. So don't think that you're crazy if you've moved onto a boat and you're finding it really much harder than you might have expected, because it is. So when I think about going outside of your comfort zone, I mean, first of all, if you're moving onto a boat, that's mega congratulations. Most people in society don't live on a boat, and so you're already going out of what many people would consider their own comfort zone. So congratulations, good start to that whole thing. But when Carolyn was talking about this being challenging for her and that I encouraged her to do it, I think that's one way to go out of your comfort zone is A, acknowledge that it's going out of your comfort zone, and B, find someone who can support you and encourage you in that leap, because it feels like a leap in a big way.
I think you're making really good points, and I will also say it's really good to separate out between living on a boat and going cruising. One of the big things that I recommend to anyone is first move onto the boat, live on the boat in the marina, then move out on anchor, learn about the dinghying and things like that, all of that stuff. And only after you're feeling really comfortable with all of that, which could be 2 months, it could be 4 months, it could be 6 months. I really doubt that it's going to be less than 2 months. Then start actually trying to move on the boat and go cruising. And even that may just be taking a weekend going to, an anchorage that's 5 miles away or something.
Yeah. And on this topic of getting out of your comfort zone and how do you do it, that's another way, is you do this in steps, right? You start with one small step and then the next steps. You're building on it. It's not just, I'm going to immediately take a leap and I've bought a boat and next week I'm moving on it and I'm going around Cape Horn. That would be one way to do it, but it would not, I think it'd be harder to be successful doing that. So one of the things, as we talk about going out of your comfort zone and taking it in steps and splitting things out and getting support, what are some tips that you've heard from other people? Because you and I both talk to other cruisers a lot, and what are some tips that you've heard from other people on how they got out of their comfort zone to go cruising?
One of the things that was great talking to Katherine Gonzalez, who worked at our booth at the Annapolis Boat Show, and now she's actually become part of our whole team with doing things.
And her book is great. Her book, The Co-Captain's Log, is great. We'll make sure there's a link in the show notes to it, but it's fantastic.
Yes, it is. And, okay, so one of the biggest things that she said is looking at what land skills you have and how they might translate onto the boat. She said, she had always been the one in the family that could untangle any mess of necklaces in the jewelry drawer and so forth. Well, suddenly on the boat, that translated to figuring out the mess of wiring that they discovered in one locker. It also happened that when they had a whole bunch of line that was all tangled together, figuring out how to untangle it. And then she said, and then I realized if I can untangle this stuff, I can certainly figure out how to tie knots in it. So that's a big one that I just heard. How about you, Nica? What are some ones you've heard?
Boy, because my head is going down the rabbit hole of some other things that I heard her talk about in her book. And one of the skills she had was talking about she did procurement for a company in her previous land life. And what that translated to was being able then to find and source great boat parts, even in really out of the way places like Tonga or French Polynesia. And I think about things that we don't think about as skills necessarily. I know for me, one of the big ones is I don't really consider it a great skill that I am good at grocery shopping and good at cooking. But actually, that's a really important skill. And understanding how to use ingredients and how they go together, that's a skill that translates very well to boat life from land life. And I think it's probably easy to dismiss skills that you use on a regular basis. Understanding that those skills are good ones to keep and you can rely on when you're going cruising and living on a boat. Carolyn and I were just talking a little bit earlier, and she talked about remembering that if you know how to drive a car, you will know how to drive a boat that has a steering wheel. There's a learning curve in terms of how the boat responds, but in terms of how do you actually steer the boat and make it go the direction you want to go in, if you know how to drive a car, you can do that on a boat with a steering wheel.
Yeah, and the same thing. I mean, frankly, pulling into a dock is actually not as hard as parallel parking that car.
But a caveat that I will say is make sure you understand which direction your prop walks.
Okay, anyways, all good things for stepping out of your comfort zone and thinking about what skills you do have that enable you to go that extra step and go into something that's new. It's not that you're stepping totally off the ledge. I mean, I think about that scene from Indiana Jones where they just take the totally off the ledge. No, you're not doing that. You are building on what you've already got. You're walking up a set of stairs.
And relying on resources that you have. One of the things I know that's really fun when you go to a place like the Annapolis Boat Show or a Boat Galley meetup or other places where there are other cruisers, it's really fun when you talk to people who are new to living on a boat and going cruising, and they realize that they have a little trick that actually can help you, even if you've been doing it for a lot longer than they have. So start the conversations, talk to people, introduce yourself, see where the conversation goes, but don't be afraid to also add your 2 cents, because what you have to share may very well help someone make that last little leap to go just a little bit further out of their comfort zone that they never would have understood or thought about if it hadn't been for you talking to them. So don't think that you have nothing to add to the conversation just because you're brand new, and don't think that you have nothing to learn just because you've been doing it for a while.
With all that, a couple of things. First of all, if there's something you're really struggling with, remember us here at the Boat Galley. You can send us an email. We'll try to help you. Or better yet, look at some of our courses and other offerings. Hopefully we'll be able to help you there too. Finally, I hope you've really enjoyed this episode of the Boat Galley podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, tell your friends about it, And let us know what you'd like us to talk about in future episodes.
Don't forget, the Boat Galley is all about making boat life better. Sometimes that is with little tips of items, and sometimes it's just with information. Have the most spectacular week.
Slow